Hi, it's Cayman with S&B, and today we're going to be installing our 40-gallon replacement tank on this 2021 WINNEBAGO REVEL. This fits all 2019 and up Sprinter chassis, including the 2020 and up WINNEBAGO REVEL. We're first going to get started by removing the filler, then we'll drop out the OEM tank, and this will be a direct replacement in the OEM tank space. If you already received your S&B tank, take out the card that was included in the box and take your camera and scan the QR code. It's going to take you to the most up-to-date installation instructions that are step-by-step. Some things I'm doing here might be nice to look at in video, but follow step-by-step in the installation instructions as those are going to be most accurate. First step is going to be removing this factory filler hose. It's a 5/16 nut driver. There's a check valve built into the tank side, so don't worry about all the fuel from the tank coming out. We'll loosen this up. Slide the hose clamp off, and the trick is to have a little bucket. Next step is going to be removing the electrical. So that's just a little button you depress on the back and yank it off. Then add the feed and the return lines. So these, you spread the fingers on the top out, then it just slides out like that. Then this one does the same, slides out, pulls out. Then if you have an auxiliary fuel tap, that's also going to slide out. Depress the button and yank that out. The last thing will be snipping that zip tie that's connecting the electrical to the fuel connector that's a part of the vehicle. So we'll snip that and the tank will be free to drop. Next, if you're doing this on the ground, support the tank with either a floor jack, maybe some tie downs, or just have a buddy stay underneath the tank while you're dropping the tank, and do your best to drop the tank with as little fuel in the tank as possible. It'll make it a lot lighter and a lot easier. But since we're doing it on the lift, now we're gonna raise our transmission jack all the way to the bottom of the tank so we can remove the straps. Now we're gonna be using an 11mm socket to remove the fuel tank strap bolts. So we got one up there, one up here, and one on here, then 3 on the other side as well. We're gonna start with the front and work our way back. Now that we have the tank out of the van, we're going to be transferring over the OEM center unit, the OEM vent line, and the OEM filler hose onto the S&B tank. So we're going to start by hitting this ring counterclockwise to get off this retainer ring. So now we're going to remove the cap from the S&B tank. We're going to make sure there's no foreign debris or that red cap didn't fall into the S&B tank. We're going to take the included S&B black O-ring, put it in the O-ring groove. And now we're going to unclip these OEM lines. Lift out the center unit. We're going to be careful. There is a black venturi pipe that is in the tank, so we're going to make sure not to damage that or the float when pulling this out. Then before putting it into the S&B tank, we are going to dump out as much fuel as we can so we don't create a mess. So now it's ready to drop into the S&B tank. And again, being careful to not damage this black venturi pipe. We have seen cases where it's put in a rush and not careful, and this venturi pipe will come in contact with the float and not let the float go up. So after it's in, there's a baffle to stick it over. Same kind of baffle in the OEM tank. We're going to drop it in and visually check to make sure that there is separation and it looks good. Now we're going to line up this tab with the arrow and the S&B tank. Press down to get the ring started underneath the teeth. And then once it's started, we'll hit the ring clockwise to lock it in past these dimples on the receiving teeth. Now we're going to snap in these fuel lines. Now I'm going to prep the tank for a pressure test. So we're going to remove these connectors, same way we did it underneath. Now I'm going to ask for a hand while I block off these two openings and the FLVV opening. A hand is going to help me poke a hole in that cover and inject some air pressure to make sure we got a good seal around this O-ring. We're going to spray soapy water. So now we're looking around this area to make sure there's no bubbles and we don't hear anything. And it looks like we got a good positive seal around this O-ring groove. And don't forget to reconnect these lines to make sure they snap all the way in. So they need to be released, snap in, locked, snapped in and locked. Now I'm going to be removing the filler hose. We're going to be inserting our check valve with the float arrow going into the tank. So we're going to insert it in here. And a little trick to make sure we don't damage this is we're going to use the filler neck on the tank to shove this in further, since it'll be pushing on that lip. So it's on there. And what we're going to do is we're also going to tighten this up when it's already in the vehicle. So if down the road we ever needed to tighten the hose clamp, we would have easy access to it if it's facing downward. And the final step in getting this tank ready to go in the van, is removing this vent hose. Just pulls off and just snaps down in the same position on the S&B tank. Then during the install, we're going to need to make sure that this stays behind. You can just pull it back, and when you're lifting the tank up, just make sure this stays behind that piece. Now it's ready to go in the van. Now we're going to be reconnecting these fuel lines. We're going to make sure that they're disconnected, pulled all the way out before reconnected. Make sure that the white connector lines up with the connector that has the white tape. You might not be able to see it, but it has one connector has white tape. Reach up, get it snapped on until you hear a click. Gently try to pull it away to make sure it is all the way locked in. And again, for the blue connector, hear the snap, lock it, gently pull away. Then lastly, if you want your heater to continue to run, make sure you put in your auxiliary fuel tap as well. So now the tank's about 6 inches from being all the way into place. Since we already have the fuel connectors up and connected, we're gonna get the fuel tank in place, lining it up where the straps are gonna go. Then also going back to that vent I mentioned on the top to make sure that clears and doesn't get bound up. Okay, now we'll start with the rear strap and we'll work our way forward. So we include 3 straps, 2 are the same and 1 is different. The one that's different goes for the front. The ones that are the same go for positions 3 and 2. The shorter side goes to the frame. And again, these are 11 mil. And make sure the electrical is all the way snapped in. You hear a little click. Now reconnecting this filler. Push it in as far as it'll go. Reusing the same hose clamps. And also remember to connect this hose clamp. This is the one that we left loose so we can tighten it up while we're underneath. And that's the install. Now that the fuel tank is in, we are going to double check to make sure all the nuts are tight, all the connectors are in and locked. The hose clamps are tight over here. Then now we're going to be transferring fuel from the OEM tank back into the S&B tank. We're going to go fill it up to make sure there's no leaks. And if you have any questions, concerns, or if you just want to find out more about the fuel tank, give us a call at 909-675-1313. Thank you.